Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. President Obama getting hammered over illegal immigration. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Today, the president asked for nearly $4 billion to deal with the crisis on the Texas-Mexican border. Mr. Obama wants to use that money to place more immigration judges at the border, build more detention centers, and hire more Border Patrol agents. But throwing money at the problem will not work. If the president is not going to move the National Guard down there, which would stop people from physically crossing the border, the rest is smoke and mirrors. Right now, anyone can cross and surrender to the Border Patrol because they will most likely be able to stay here. So why would you spend $4 billion when it's not going to do anything? They're still going to come over. And what about Mexico? That country is facilitating millions of people walking up to the border through their territory. President Obama remains silent on Mexico. Talking Points believes Mr. Obama just wants the problem to go away. He doesn't really want to solve it. Why? Because his left-wing base doesn't want to solve it.
This crisis, that some call it crisis, we have to view as an opportunity. I'm a mother of 5. I have 9 grandchildren. I wish that I could take all those children home with me. We're all Americans in this hemisphere, North and South America.
All right, so that's an open border statement. Let them all in, no restraints at all. According to Congresswoman Pelosi, we're all Americans. Doesn't matter whether you live in Tierra del Fuego, doesn't matter if you live in the Arctic. We're all Americans. Therefore, everybody come on in. I mean, this woman is off the chart loopy, is she not? If Mrs. Pelosi knew anything, which she apparently doesn't, she would know that the United States simply cannot afford to absorb millions of uneducated people. Our welfare system strained to the limit now. So is the public school system. Schools in the poorer precincts are generally a disaster. And now you're going to add millions of more poor students to an already crumbling system? Is that what you're going to do? The basic immigration problem is centered in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, according to data collected by the Census Bureau and Homeland Security. Almost 3 million immigrants from those countries have come to the USA, and 60% of them are illegal. 70% of all those immigrants cannot speak English very well. 70%. About 50% of them lack a high school education, and more than 50% of the immigrants from those 3 countries use at least one major welfare program once they get here. So the Obama administration is allowing millions of people to come in without the skills necessary to compete in the marketplace. That's creating an underclass. Folks who generally will work hard when they get the chance, but because of language and education deficits are largely consigned to low-paying jobs. Again, with a debt approaching $18 trillion, the USA doesn't have the money to support all these people. In addition, our infrastructure is declining, along with median incomes of working Americans. And you can't tax working folks anymore. So the unintended consequences of illegal immigration are staggering. Nancy Pelosi and other liberals ignore the facts, preferring to live in a fantasy world of self-righteousness. Oh, I wish I could take each and every one. And attacking those who want immigration law to be enforced. Why do we have the law in the first place? And the government, the federal government, to be run responsibly. According to all the polls, most Americans do want illegal aliens to be treated fairly. Only the fringe has animus towards them. People living in corrupt nations are desperate. Most understand that. But fair-minded Americans also understand that this country's in severe decline. And the president, as well as the Democratic Party, is largely responsible for that. I mean, it's outrageous to allow a chaotic border situation that harms the entire nation. Is it not? And that's the memo. Now for the top story reaction. With us here in the studio, Monica Crowley. From Washington, Kirsten Powers, both are Fox News analysts. So where am I going wrong here, Kirsten? Very specific, please.
There's just not enough time, Bill, really. Okay, let's just start with the fact that you don't need to be educated to do a lot of the jobs that these people are doing. And certainly my relatives who came to this country, I don't know if yours came with PhDs from Ireland.
No,
mine certainly didn't.
Mine
were farmers.
on welfare? Were they taking welfare?
Well, I don't think welfare existed then, Bill.
No, it didn't.
Yeah.
And mine didn't take welfare either, but 50% of the people that I just cited are on welfare.
Okay, well, let me finish. But had welfare existed, I suspect that a lot of Irish people who came into this country in the 1800s, in the turn of the century, would have been on welfare because they were very poor.
Look,
they were very poor. And let me say another thing. I don't understand your sudden fascination with Central Americans when the bulk of the immigrants who come into this country come from Mexico, and they have a much higher.
We're talking about the current border crisis, Kirsten.
They have a higher. Oh, Mexicans don't have anything to do with the border crisis?
10% are now Mexicans in the last fiscal year, and overwhelmingly it's Central America that's sending their children and accompanying adults with them. Listen, because you don't seem to be very educated on this in general. You don't seem to really know what you're talking about.
Oh,
the
really,
stats
Bill?
say 50%.
Come on. You know, I am so tired of this with you. I am so tired of your mocking liberals because they care about people, that there's something self-righteous about wanting to take care of children.
So
you know,
your
I thought
open
this was
border
a Christian
stance
country,
puts you
Bill.
morally above people who want the law to be obeyed.
I thought that we have. Don't we advertise to the world? Give us. You're hungry. You're poor. You're tired. You know. But no, not according to Bill O'Reilly.
No, according to Kirsten Powers, though, you hold the high moral ground.
You know.
You hold the high moral ground.
There is a high moral ground. There is a high moral ground in believing that our country
because you want an open border situation to let everybody in. That's what you want.
I would like to have an open border situation.
Yes, you do. You said it on
this
this program
country.
3 or 4 times. You want an open border. You want to accept them all.
And you
are on a high moral ground.
And
I'm a cruel
misrepresent
barbarian.
my views, and you misrepresent the views of other people. And you come up with these crazy ideas that people who do manual labor have to have an education. You don't need an education to do manual labor.
That's right. 50% of the people are taking welfare programs. You know it. Everybody knows it. That's the stat.
They don't. Well, you know what? There are different people who've come into this country for different reasons. El Salvador, for example, a lot of those people were not economic refugees. They were fleeing a war. It is not the same thing
war was in the
as
80s,
economic refugees.
Okay?
And they weren't. And you don't think that those people count?
Let's give Monica a shot to get in here. So you see it a totally different than Kirsten, right?
I do, yes. I mean, what she was talking about, the earliest ways of immigration to this country, those folks came in legally, and there is a path to
some of them did, some of them did.
Legal immigration. Look, this current crisis has all the earmarks of being orchestrated and perpetuated by an administration that wanted to get some sort of comprehensive immigration reform done. So in order to put the screws to the Republicans, to Democrats who may have been reluctant to do it, they created this crisis. And that's why you see this president not lifting a finger to try to alleviate it.
But it works against him because now comprehensive immigration reform will never be passed during his tenure.
But he doesn't need it. He doesn't need the Congress. He has shown repeatedly that he has gone around the Congress. It's never going to be the law of the land. Look, one of the big reasons why you're seeing this huge influx is he took executive action on the DREAM Act, right? Sending this signal to all these kids to come in, lax border security, and the promise of amnesty. And both sides are guilty of this, by the way. The Republicans are just as guilty as the Democrats. But the creation of the crisis, like what you just heard from Nancy Pelosi, never let a good crisis go to waste. Saul Alinsky. So now what they're doing is overwhelming the system, so then they can make a moral and humanitarian argument, like Kirsten is making, that you have to give them a pathway to amnesty. And now we're going to be stuck with
I see it differently.
I think the public services
I see it differently, and I'm going to give you both 30 seconds to wrap it up. I see it differently. I see that this border crisis has now made it impossible for Barack Obama and the liberal wing of the Democratic Party to get their comprehensive immigration reform. They'll never get it. So they sabotage themselves. I'll give you 30 seconds to make your point, but let Ms. Powers jump in. 30 seconds to sum up your position.
Monica just said the difference between the early immigrants and these immigrants is that they were legal. We have been discussing legal immigrants because you wouldn't have that data. That data all applies to legal immigrants. Illegal immigrants are not draining the system because they're outside of the system. So those two things have nothing to do with each other. Furthermore, there are fewer people coming into this country under Barack Obama than there were under George Bush. That is an empirical fact. I don't know why you guys keep trying to pretend that Obama doesn't care about this issue and that he hasn't done anything on it.
All right, 30 seconds.
Well, you have absolute chaos. When you don't have borders, you don't have a country, which some might argue is the point of why he's allowing this to get so out of control. When you talk about no comprehensive reform, that is true. It's dead at least for this year.
It's dead.
But this president doesn't need it because he's gone around the Congress and will continue to do it. When he said he was going to take unilateral action, what you're seeing at the border is it.
All right. Ladies, thank you very much. Next on the rundown, a Republican congressman accusing President Obama of allowing illegal aliens into the country for political reasons. Later, Charles